In this video, we want to walk through the calendar screen in the Multiply app for Word of Life 51 Student Ministries. As you can see, I'm at the dashboard, and you'll notice along the bottom, the third icon in the middle looks like a little calendar button, so I'm going to touch on that. And that takes us directly into the Youth Group Ministries calendar. So in the web app version of the mobile app, you are able to use the calendar features there to set your calendar up for multiple months or the whole year. You can actually drag and drop curriculum lessons, and you can design a whole meeting that is standard and then make edits and so on. But I'm sharing that with you so that you'll see that anywhere where you see a bolded, and you can see it's a red icon, that means if I touch on that, you'll see, hey, there's an event going on those days. If I touch on one where there is no event, you'll see no events. So that's basically how this works. And to navigate, you can either use the right and left arrows at the top, or you can just simply swipe your finger right or left and easily navigate between months. Now, what I want to do, because the power of this really comes in, and by the way, there's a little plus button here if you want to add an event here. Just a basic event. But I would recommend you do that on the web app and not here. It's much cleaner and simpler and much more powerful. So right here, I'm going to touch on September 30th, and you'll see we've got a lesson there called Something Worth Talking About that we've set up. So I'll touch on that, and that takes us into that youth group night meeting or day meeting, whenever you're meeting. And notice it has the lesson title, it has the purpose statement for the lesson, and it has what you have already set up as Thomas is doing the icebreaker, Abner is doing the worship. You could see each person who is doing different parts of the meeting is all set up. And notice also that any notes, notice there's announcement for the can drive is due, and so on. All of this you can set up for each meeting specifically, and the beauty of it, once you set it up, everybody's got access to it. Everybody, from parents who you have given access to the calendar, to your leaders, to your key leaders, and your admins. And you can also, right from here, using the pencil on the top right, touch on the pencil, and you can actually go in and make changes to things. Let's say, for instance, that Abner was not going to be available, so he cannot do take 5 for the cause. So I'm going to touch on the little pencil, and instead of Abner, I'm going to add David Livingston to do the take 5 for the cause, and I'm going to update that. Now, here's the beauty of this. Because David has been changed and put in there, and Thomas, and you see the different people, depending on how you have set up your notifications, you will receive notifications on these things the day and the time that you set up for yourself to be notified up to 5 days ahead of time. So I've made a change, so I'm going to do the checkbox, which will save those changes. You can see that now shows up into the screen. And then you'll also notice at the bottom of the screen, I've got a list of all the students. Now, the reason I have the list of all the students is because I am a key leader. So an admin or a key leader will be able to view every student. If I were a leader, say, and I'm going to use this filter button here, notice filter small groups, I'm going to touch that. I'm going to actually pretend that I am the boys 7th and 8th grade leader. So if I was set up as the boys 7th and 8th grade leader, this is what I would see in my group, just my guys. So as a leader of a small group, if you're set up with permissions of a leader, you are only going to see those students that are assigned to your small group. Now, the beauty of the filter button here, because if I'm a key leader or an administrator, I'm able to fill in. Let's say somebody got sick and they needed me to fill in. I could easily do that. I can filter down to just see my students. Now, let's talk about the icons to the right of each name. So right now we notice Sam Collins. Hey, Sam is there. So I'm just going to touch that box, and I'm going to do attendance. And good thing tonight is everybody's here, so I'm going to quickly do attendance. Done. That's how simple attendance is. Notice also that you've got the little icon that looks like a message box. That is where I can put notes for tonight. Maybe Sam it said, hey, would you just pray for me this week and check with me next week about talking to my brother about Christ. So I'm just going to say, pray for witness to bro. Okay, just abbreviate that. I'm going to update the notes. So now next week I can go in here and that will actually show up and I'll see what's going on and be able to be reminded to ask Sam that. The other thing I can do with any of my students here, if I touch on the little icon for the person, that takes me right into their personal information. Let's say a phone number changed or there was some information that I needed to update. I can very quickly review those things. I can view them, right? I can go to their cause circle and update that. And I can also go into their discipleship. So let's say Sam also, we want to record his quiet time for this week. And he had a good week. He had 4 days. So we're going to do that. Notice the date defaults to the current date. And I'm going to choose that as my date. And that automatically updated his quiet time. And then I click back and back one more time. And I'm right back to where I was. So I can very quickly take attendance, update their creative discipleship content, take notes on things that we discuss. And then lastly, notice the 2 buttons at the bottom. We've got lesson outline. So remember the lesson was something worth talking about. Here's a couple of definition of terms and the outline of what we covered in the lesson with fill in the blanks that coincides with the student notes that we might hand out that night that are made available with each of our lessons. Notice that you can make that bigger with the plus and minus buttons on the top right. So I'm going to go back out. And then I also, in small group, we're going to talk about the application of the lesson. So we've got a small group guide. And notice we have 3 questions for this lesson. And notice they got the question, but then in parentheses, we've got some notes. And that is designed for you, the small group leader, to use to formulate your thinking on what you're going to talk about. And by the way, we give you 3 questions. The goal here is not necessarily got to cover every lesson. The goal is let's apply the lesson. Let's talk about how it hit the students. And the questions are designed by the writer to help guide you in leading a small group discussion. And then the next steps section is all about, all right, we've talked about it, but what are we going to do about it this week? And it's just walking through how we can encourage the students to take action on what they're doing. And because this is a reader, of course, you can also do the same, make it bigger and make it smaller. So I'm going to go back now. And then the last thing I'm going to show you is this pray for your students. So in small group, what am I going to do? I'm going to check attendance, take notes on things that maybe they want me to remember or things I can be praying for. I can go in and check their discipleship and update their information. I can see the lesson outline. I can see the small group discussion guide. And by the way, I would recommend that you use this as something to prepare for small group. So you could do this at your lunchtime, just preparing for that night's meeting. And then notice pray for your students. So if I touch on that, what that does is takes me into a nice screen for prayer requests. And if you can notice, every single guy has something here, but several of them have no prayer requests. But let's start with Sam. Sam has a prayer request, and I want you to notice just below pray for your students, it says slide left in order to edit or remove anything. So I'm going to take where you notice where it has the cause circle items that are right below prayer requests. So I'm going to actually slide to the left and I'm going to edit. For Jill right now we're praying, and what I'm going to do is move her to care, because actually Sam is going to try to do something this week to show the love of Christ for Jill. Give me just a second. I didn't save it, so let me make sure I update that. So I'm going to touch that and I'm going to touch update, and you'll see that it's updating. All right, so now what I'm going to do too, notice with prayer request, if I slide to the left, I can edit that prayer request. So let's say Sam also wants me to pray for his test on math. So this week, so that's another prayer request. I'm going to click the update and notice that is now there. So you have the ability right here, oh, I want to add another person to Joe decides to get in on the cause circle. Again, he wants to add somebody. So we're going to add a person, and this is going to be Will, his friend Will, and he's at the prayer stage of the cause circle. So we've got the option of prayer care share. We're just going to keep it at prayer, and we're going to submit that, and notice that shows up. And notice here, Carter doesn't even have a prayer request, but he brings one this week. So again, we slide left, we go to edit, and we add that request. And he's going to ask to pray for his mom job. All right, because she's looking for a job. So we're going to update that. And there it is. So the beauty of this is every week you come in, this is going to be consistent, the same every week, and you have the ability to go in and update and change these anytime you want. So let me go back now to the main screen. So here's the power of this calendar. Once you go back out to the calendar and you touch on a specific date, all of a sudden you are navigating into that day for that lesson, what the lesson is on, what's happening during the lesson, any special notes we talked about that we need to think about as a team. You can take attendance. Oh, and I'm going to filter again. Remember we talked about filtering. I can do attendance. I can take notes. I can see the lesson outline. I can have small group leader stuff. So, and I can pray for my students and update that. So here's what it is. Everything I need to be a youth leader and lead a small group, I have in the palm of my hand on my phone. That's the power of this calendar screen, and we want to encourage you to use it, and just hopefully it'll be a great resource to help you in your ministry.